Welcome, everyone, to the Only Women Entrepreneurs podcast, or O. Here we talk to powerful women on alternative careers who have forged their own paths in life and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Rosemary Cescolini, a high school English teacher who left the education world in favor of manufacturing. For more than 30 years, I crafted custom handmade wood doors at Royal Door Limited, a family-owned and operated business since 1975. There, we built thousands of our products for celebrities, TV shows, blockbuster movies, and countless people around the world. Now, I pioneer O, an organization focused on empowering and equipping aspiring women with the necessary tools for success in entrepreneurship and alternative careers. Join me as we talk to accomplished guests and discover the lessons they learned along their way. Today, we have the distinct honor speaking with a true trailblazer in the field of manufacturing engineering, Stephanie Thompson. Stephanie's journey is a testament to the power of determination, unwavering commitment, and a passion of a woman just killing it in an industry where women have low representation. With a career that expands over 21 years in the automotive sector, Stephanie has not only blasted through glass ceilings, but has also been a driving force for change and inclusivity in a traditionally male-dominated realm. Currently serving as engineering manager at General Motors Canada, Stephanie is at the forefront of an industry where she's actively pursuing new and innovative ways of promoting STEM. Beyond her role as engineering manager, Stephanie is deeply involved in initiatives focusing on leading women and students to break down technology barriers and create worlds of new possibilities. In 2018, she launched her social enterprise, STEM by Steph, where her innovative projects break down barriers by making STEM subjects accessible to all women. Stephanie's outstanding accomplishments have been recognized 4 years in a row, encompassing 2020 right through to 2023, where she was recognized by the Women's Executive Network as one of Canada's top 100 most powerful women. She's now retired from this network and will become part of their Hall of Fame. Whew. Now that Stephanie has retired, I may stand a chance of earning this incredible achievement. In addition to this prestigious recognition, Stephanie was the winner of the GNCC Business Award for Science and Technology and received from her alma mater, the University of Waterloo, the 2020 Alumni Achievement Medal for Community Service. In 2021, the Women of Inspiration recognized Stephanie with a finalist award. Now, that is an incredible list of accomplishments, and I finally got to the end of it, and I can welcome you and say hello, Stephanie, to the whole podcast.
Very happy to be here. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thank you for taking the time. So I'd like to just start off by letting the audience know a little bit about you and the life you've led so far. So can you walk us through your past education and work experiences?
Sure. Originally I'm from Ottawa, and so I grew up, kind of in the government town. And like any good oldest child of a family of four, my first aspiration was to move as far as I could away from, having so many younger siblings at home. And I ended up at the University of Waterloo for engineering. I had a really great chemistry teacher who just saw something in me. She got me a great opportunity to visit a place called Chalk River when I was in high school. It felt really smart to be picked by a teacher to go and participate in something that was exposing women to engineering and science, et cetera. So those extracurriculars really do matter for those teachers who are listening. And so when I ended up in Waterloo, I ended up with a degree in chemical engineering. But I looked around and I never really knew there was a real, you hear about challenges that women face, but my class was about 43% women. And so, I went to schooling with quite an extensive number of really powerful, talented women. And, over the last 20 years of our career, I've had some good role models and seeing how they've navigated their careers and their lives, up to CEO or VP of companies. And so it really gave me a sense of the potentials. I've never really seen as many detractions until perhaps you get into some of those niche markets. I think there's definitely lots of women out there, but they don't all seem to sit in the same space, the same classroom at the same time. And so, but knowing that they're there, I think is can be really comfortable feeling to know that there is belonging and there is people who are really succeeding in the space that they're at.
And that's very encouraging to hear. And sometimes many years ago, I did date an engineering student from the University of Toronto. And he said, why don't you just come to one of my lectures? And I said, okay, sure. And it was a lecture hall that was approximately 500 in capacity. And there was only a handful of women. And so I turned to the boyfriend at the time. I said, so is that all in women? And he goes, well, actually, there's only two. The other ladies are girlfriends. They're just attending class. So, just hearing it from you that things have changed, that there is more representation sounds very promising.
Yeah, I think the change is happening in pockets. I think, one thing about women is they want to work and be in a place where they're being respected and valued. And so whether it's the classroom setting or the business setting, you'll find these pockets of, when you've got a truly excellent female boss, women want to work for her. And so that she can create a team or a microcosm of that where, women know that they're valued. They have areas where they know it's not going to be a toxic culture, that the woman's going to be respectful of their needs and wants. And so I think that's a big piece of what representation is, right? Is somebody knowing that they're going to be a little bit on your side because they at least have some of the same perspective that you've had and the struggles that you might have, whether it's joining non-traditional roles or coming up through education or, family care or responsibilities, the kind of the cultural side of any society. So I think it's really important to have those leaders in different roles, just to really get the sense that there's something that's going to be, solvable, right? That there's somebody that's going to be there for you when you truly need it most as an employee.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. And one of the reasons why I started the podcast, because we need more exposure. For example, I see you as a female leader, very strong with your academic pursuits, and you have an incredible position at General Motors Canada, which is highly respected. So just to see people like yourself that is in a respectable position, it encourages our young women to say, you know what? There are women out there doing it. So perhaps I should take a shot if I'm interested in that particular industry or field of education.
Oh, absolutely. And there definitely is a marketing perspective that says, you can't know what every job is. And I think there's a tagline that says, most of the people who are graduating now will do jobs that haven't been invented yet, right? So there's always that element of the unknown. But if you work in an industry that has maybe lots of background, a lot of history, you'd want to hear those stories. You want to hear the stories of the women who are being successful, because I think if you just kind of leave it to your imagination or you don't have any data points, you do kind of only hear maybe the negative side or the case studies that are in toxic environments, but most are not like that. Companies can't afford it on their bottom dialer to leave organizations floundering with toxicity. It's just not the way you can do business anymore. And frankly, with the way social media is, people and individuals are calling out those kind of companies and reporting them. And, we know a lot about some of maybe the challenges that Silicon Valley's gone through and, some of those spaces where you can't just keep those things quiet anymore. And so more and more, the accountability is really prevalent, and you shouldn't need them. And I think looking for those industries where women are being successful speaks a lot to what the culture is, and that it is a place where women can belong. And I think that's really important. Something I coach all my young girls coming out. You can't change toxicity. It's not our responsibility to make the company or make the place of work more respectful of us. And we, I think as women, we inherently want to take that on ourselves. We want to take that responsibility on and think that, what did I do wrong or what can I do differently? When it really is what you should do is get out, because you can't make an agency change the way that they're fundamentally based or the points of view. It has to come from the top down, and it has to be the things that aren't acceptable. And so young women who are graduating, if they find themselves in that position, it's really about saying, you shouldn't be treated this way. So really your venue is to leave and to get out of those kind of toxic spaces, because you can't make it different. You have to be the one that finds the place where somebody's going to support you and mentor you and sponsorship, towards your career.
Yeah, and that's the only way you're going to find personal fulfillment and longevity at a particular career, or else you're going to leave eventually, because you can only take that toxicity for so long, and then you realize that you yourself can't change the environment, so it's best that you move on, or else it will just sour you in your experience.
Well, and we all have limited energies, right? And I want to spend my time directing energy towards pursuit of knowledge, problem solving, working with my teams. If you have to sort of fight that side battle every time you go to if you fight microaggressions, if you're fighting people who don't believe or value your work, it takes away your energy. And truly, technical fields, whether it's trades, whether it's engineering, they're hard venues to get into. They're hard to stay in. They require a lot of discipline, a lot of studying and intellect. So why would you take away from that energy if you don't have to? Because I think at the end of the day, we all want to be able to be really good at our jobs and do a good job. Everybody gets up wanting to perform and be good at what they do. And toxic cultures don't really allow that space to happen. So
yeah, you're so right on that. So you've had over 21 years of experience in the automotive industry. What inspired you to pursue this particular career path initially, and what is your exact role?
Well, I'd say it wasn't really an intent on my part. I graduated, I applied to a whole bunch of jobs, and General Motors offered me. And I truly got really, I'd say, lucky in some spaces, because the job I applied to, I have a background in chemical engineering. So the original job I'd hired for, the job disappeared before I even got hired. But on the interview panel was somebody from my specific site. And so he saw something in my interview and said, hey, if you can hold on a little bit, I've got a contract pace for you right now, but, jobs are going to be coming up. And so, I listened and went with that. So it was really not so much of a space that I knew I really wanted to get into, but I'll tell you, I got hired at the really perfect time at the beginning of a launch. I've worked with some really talented people. The technical space that drives the automotive industry is top notch. And I've had a really great ability to work with so many different types of talented, I'd say mostly men, but men who are really encouraging, supportive, really about the greater good and making the job what it is, working together as a team to drive product and launches and all the rest. I don't think I've ever had a space in my career where, I never felt from my team or from the people I worked with that, whatever I wanted to do wasn't possible. I had a really great boss for about 10 years that was very supportive. I do a lot of extracurriculars, which is just in my passion space. And so being able to blend, kind of the work hard on the job, but then spend time, in my spare time and volunteering, but also have that be supported, right? Recognizing my abilities to do that, can be additive to the job and not necessarily retract from it. It's having somebody who values your whole self. And I think there's a quote that says, like, if you have to pretend who you are on the job, that's not really, it's not a place that's going to be a benefit to you. It's not what you need. And if a boss doesn't want to recognize all of the different things you can bring to the table, then that's not necessarily the true leader that you need to be successful. Yes. So I ended up in automotive, kind of a bit of an accident, but right place, right time, and with a right team to support, and which is why you keep coming back to a job, right? You come back because the work drives you, because it's so fascinating, because there's never enough solutions to the problems that we have. There's never enough people to solve them all. And I've always found a place where my voice could be heard.
Yeah, that's great. A couple of takeaways from what you just said. I'm finding that the youth are not taking any challenges or stepping up these days. Like they get a degree in a particular category, and then they'll go out on the job hunt, but they're not hiring for my particular position. So they don't bother applying. But what you just said is, yes, you graduated as a chemical engineer, and that's what you were specifically looking for. So you were presented with another opportunity. Had you passed that up, you wouldn't have been in this great situation that you are now. So my message just for a takeaway for the youth, just try everything out there, because something that you might have had the intent of starting, you might be given another opportunity, and perhaps it's something that might be a lifelong fulfilling career for you.
Yeah, and you don't know what you don't know. I think the piece of youth is that they've got so much enthusiasm, but they haven't been able to have the time to study things. And so, that's why hobbies are so important. It's why having, when you're in high school, having part-time jobs for me that were, maybe more technical in nature. If you have a chance between maybe a fast food restaurant and a hardware store, the hardware store is going to get you interacting with technical people. So exploring that avenue as young as you can makes a big difference. It gives you that leg up when you have a chance. And then you're right, saying yes to opportunities as they come up. I think what students do very, very well right now is they don't anticipate having a 30 or 40-year career. They anticipate that really to get the financial benefit out of a job, they need to move and get some diversity. But while they're doing that, exploring different kinds of companies, big companies, little companies, entrepreneurship, I think there's definitely a sense that they've got a future that has a lot more variety than we've ever had a chance to see, right? I don't know that they're going to be sitting in the position we're sitting. But that's okay too, because I think that drives a different type of being able to explore, being more resilient to change, being open to those things, where I think sometimes we, I particularly, very risk adverse, because part of my job is understanding and assessing kind of risk factors from a quality, from a safety, from a production perspective, as people are interacting with machines or people are interacting with our product. And so I think there's definitely a skill set that's going to develop out of that might take us to a new place. And only maybe when we look back 30 years from now, when they're at the end of their careers, will we see kind of the benefits or the negatives perhaps of what that drove into our workforce.
Yes. And the other point that I enjoyed listening to was the fact that you were welcomed by a team which was predominantly male. They made you feel welcome. And by working together collaboratively, that's where solutions are going to happen. So let's talk about the importance of both everyone that is in a particular work environment, that they need to step up and work as a team, as opposed to, being polarized and working on your own. Do you care to comment on that?
I heard a really great study, and it was looking at two groups of students, one that was homogeneous in nature and one that was, say, mixed, whether it was ethnicity, backgrounds, or experience levels. And when you studied their performance as they did a set of challenges, the homogeneous team didn't do or perform as well, but they felt they did, because there was less conflict and less strife and less, right? But those are the things. So on the mixed team, they performed better, but at the end they didn't feel like they did, because that conflict was there. But to me, that really speaks to leadership. It really speaks to a leadership in an organization that needs to help facilitate and manage the debate and the discussions around things like change and work team efforts and the rest. I mean, the team that felt like they did well is because they kind of all agreed with each other, might have the same backgrounds, they might have the same personal opinions. So at the end, they felt a little satisfied about that, and the discussion wasn't driving them. So I think that's really where it's important to have that strong leadership and to be able to mitigate the conflict so that it becomes and turns it positive, because I think it can go very south and very sour. And if you're on a team maybe where there's no, like, I can think of students who might be working on a group project that they can't control their other teammates because they all have the same level. That's where it becomes particularly controversial, because not everybody is going to pull their weight in the same way.
That's right.
And so I think the ideal team is one where somebody has become that bit of a leader that can guide you through it, and that
Mhm.
all players do want to come to the table and produce kind of the same quality work. Not that they have to think the same way, because it's the differences that really make the project as strong as it can. But at the same time, we talk about it, but we don't really have great examples of how to do that. How do you get two groups of people who are, fundamentally conflicting to work
Mhm.
together for a resolve? And I think, if the state of the world is what's going on right now is very much an indication of, as individuals, it's very hard when we all hold different ideologies to move something forward. And so I think even in the workspace, when you have two different types of personalities trying to work together,
Mhm.
leadership is really critical to make sure we respect each other's differences so that we can work collaboratively together.
Yes, that's a really key point that you brought up. One of O's mission is to help women tap into their potential and overcome challenges. Can you share some of the challenges you perhaps encountered throughout your career in a traditionally male-dominated field, and how did you overcome them?
It's interesting because, I think in my career, when I looked around, there was a significant number of engineers who might have had, stay-at-home wives, or perhaps didn't have kind of extensive family or children situations. And so, when I
Mhm.
was young, I always thought that would be a big negative or a big detraction as somebody who might want to have a family, because, it was just almost not done by. And in manufacturing, there's a lot of hours, there's a lot of, a lot of commitment. There's can be lots of weekends
Yes.
depending on where you are in the space of your project. And so I always thought that would be maybe a harder challenge to navigate. But I think what labor laws have done, what governments have done, what parental leaves have done, particularly focusing on making sure men are as balanced in women. So the law side of jobs, it really has changed, and the perception of that has changed over the last, say 5 to 10 years for me. Whereas by the time I got to that space, what I thought was going to be a particularly daunting challenge, you realize it's just another bump on any road. There's
Mhm.
solutions. You're able to pay for childcare if you don't have family situations. There's alternatives and options. Maybe we lost some of those during COVID, and definitely we can all lament the state of kind of the women who have left that workforce during
Mhm.
that era
Yep.
because of the lack of affordable or opportunities for looking at childcare. But in normal, steady state, I think we definitely have some opportunities, and especially if you have a job that is well paid, an engineering position or a trades position, where you can have a little bit of affordability to balance out some of those particular challenges. So, I guess any challenge is it's almost sometimes it's lack of information. You have to kind of gather your information, figure out your resources, problem solve your way through it, and maybe then in the end it doesn't seem like it's such a big challenge anymore. And
It's
as
so
your kids
true.
get up and grow
Mhm.
older, then you're kind of staying fluid. You got to stay flexible to what those needs are, but it is also a very small portion of your career. My strategy, I kind of intentionally had kids later in life so that I had that ability to build up a career and build up credibility. Put the
Mhm.
long work hours in early so that when I left, I had no worries or negating of what I could or couldn't do. I felt very comfortable and confident in my abilities. And a year over the span of a 40-year career of a mat leave is very, very insignificant. But I think
It is.
sometimes in your early careers, it kind of they make you feel like it is more significant than it is,
Mhm.
right? That it can be a loss or whatever. But for those who have taken it, those who might know that particular challenge, it really isn't in the grand scheme of things. Lots of things come up in life, whether it's taking care of elders, whether it's taking a compassion leave to take care of other
Absolutely.
people in your family. Like as human beings, having that bit of flexibility to take some time away from work is can always be a critical piece. And it
Mhm.
doesn't take away from your ability to be a good engineer or be a good worker or be a good tradesperson in your space. We all need that flexibility and time. And so, it was more daunting before I got to that space than it was while I was in it or while I'm going through it right now.
It's excellent to hear. And as you mentioned, I feel like the sandwich generation because you have to take care of elderly parents. And of course, you might have a spouse or you might have children. And so again, that balance of trying to take care of family as well as your roles at work. It's like you said, there's a solution. You try to make it work. I remember the early years when I first started in manufacturing, and my husband was adamant. He says, I would really like it if you were at home with the kids. So when they were young, I stayed home and I worked on the computer, right? And I could use the phone, and that was fine with sales and marketing. Then as they got older and they were in school, I was able to put them on the bus and go to the office until it was time for them to return. So I kind of like pivoted in a way that I was able to do what I needed to do. And then there were important days. Yes, of course. If there was field trips, I wanted to be there. So I would take time off and I would plan it in my schedule. I'm sorry, I'm not available today, but I'll be available these days, and just letting my clients know and also planning for it. It just allowed a lot more freedom for me. So it didn't feel as daunting, and I didn't feel like I was giving anything up. And sometimes when you're in a department where your clients rely on you, and you're not there, that's one thing you're really concerned of. But if you're able to give them advance notice and be able to take care of them when you return, then everything's fine, like you said.
Well, and I think what COVID helped us do too is see that there is potential for alternative work schedules, right? I mean,
That's
not
right.
that you want to be stayed in touch with, for the entire day, but like, should you have a need to look at a company that can afford you to go pick up your kids off the bus and then come back and do some work in the evening to balance it out. Like, there's alternate work situations that are really appealing. And I think all of them go to support a large portion of women. And I think that's what I've learned the most about is how sensitive the workforce is for women. It definitely has not reached parity. It's not in equal terms or footing at this point. Looking as a new hire and coming in from the baseline, you can't always predict all of those things and know how to ask those questions on culture for a business. And not every business is large enough or big enough or diverse enough to be able to do all of those things. And so it's a bit of a minefield still, right? You're not exactly sure what you're going to need till you need it. And so I guess expressing those concerns, making sure that the politicians are hearing our voices, that they've got those things as part of mandatory litigation, so that they have the policies in the right places to support women, I think is fundamentally one of the most important things to make sure that women are supported in the workforce.
Yeah, that's a great point. So in the intro, it was mentioned that you started your social enterprise, STEM by Steph, in 2018. For our aspiring women considering entrepreneurship, can you describe what a social enterprise is and tell us more about your organization and its mission?
Yeah, I mean, so I work full time, and I've got family and kids and all the rest of responsibilities.
You're busy.
So, I mean, for me, a social enterprise is the flexibility to create content, create something that you give to other people's, and it doesn't necessarily need to have the same responsibilities of a business, because to me it's about giving back to the community while you're serving a purpose. So for me, I mean, I saw an infographic. It was produced by Ontario Network of Women Engineers. It was like a pipeline that talked about where women were falling out of the STEM pipeline, and it was just such a great kind of information of what's going on, because it was based in Ontario data, which is kind of where I'm living right now, and knowing that there's these kind of puddles, and I kind of asked myself, like, what's going on? Where are these women who are falling out of the pipeline? I mean, frankly, we can say they're not falling out. In some cases, they're being pushed, or they're being asked to leave, and it's not always a positive situation. But kind of what happens to them after that? Because as I'm sitting around and there's only a few engineers in my space, and perhaps maybe we talk about some industries that have 10 or 20% women, but some are definitely still in the 1% to 2%. When women are graduating and coming into these industries, like, who's their support network? Who's going to challenge and help them? Who's going to champion them up the ladder and break those ceilings for them and support them? And if we look around and there's just not enough women to bear that load, like, what can we do differently? And so I started looking at the question of, if women are falling out, how do we reattract them back to STEM? How do we use their talents or their passions? And so I created a workshop series that was fundamentally focused on connecting, everyday women. I'd say like my average age is probably 40, right? From, anybody is open to most, I bring to from ages 14 and up to, 99 kind of thing. But it's really about focusing on those women that maybe didn't have the champion or the support network or the guidance counselor, the right person to help them in there. And they left the pipeline, but have a high affinity for STEM. And I connect them with workshop leaders that are experts in their field, women who may or may not have had some more privileges than they had, or just right place at right time. And by connecting those two groups of people, it's been really powerful to have this synergy of kind of knowledge earned or kept by a group of women who are technical experts teaching a group of people who love STEM or want to know more about it. And so it was really just that sense of kind of a positive connection of people passing that knowledge. Because if you look at where STEM knowledge is traditionally held, it's held by men. It's held by, the generation before us, which frankly are all male. But there are lots of women who operate in the space. It's harder to find them. And so I see my role as finding them and then connecting the women of today with them so that we know that they're out there. We hear their stories. We see them operating in that space, and we allow that synergy to happen to help create a moment that knows that you're not alone out there. There are lots and lots of women in STEM fields, and the more we can connect, the more we can support each other.
Well, that's great. I love that. So one question that a lot of individuals ask is, in terms of financial security, how has your career in engineering provided you with stability and opportunities for personal growth?
Oh, I'd say for me, I mean, coming out of a co-op program at university was huge, where you're getting, very highly paid jobs. Coming out with very little debt is a huge asset to anybody in any age. At the time that I bought my house, for example, I mean, housing prices notwithstanding the last few years, I settled in an affordable area of the country. But I was able to buy my own place without having to need a roommate or, a spouse or somebody to make that transaction happen. I've had very big luxuries of traveling all over the world, based on, having a very good salary. And so,
Nice.
I never really felt beholden to somebody. I never really felt trapped in a relationship. I see women that happens to, right? You get into a space where you either, have with the wrong person, or you've made some mistakes, and the financial is what holds you back. And so I love the idea of having a kind of that financial independence as being one of the priorities I held, because I always wanted to be that person that could control my own destiny and not be kind of beholden to somebody else. So that piece of the world is very critical, and having a degree where the salary coming out, meant low debt, meant, ability to do what I want to do when I want to do it was a really big factor for me. Really, when I look back at kind of my decision making, I was really good in chemistry. It was the chemistry teacher who picked me for that special event that kind of made me feel I could do it. But so I was looking at, kind of the sciences versus the engineering. And to me, the engineering kind of won out because of the marketability, because of the job and the profitability of what your salary would be, more so than a science degree. And so, maybe I was a bit kind of ruthless at heart by thinking those things. But that opportunity, I figured if I could do it, then I should do it, right? If I could get in, if I could qualify, if I could, keep that application open. And I always think, like, let them tell me that I am not supposed to be there. If I take myself out of the game, there's nothing's going to benefit or come out of those. So stay and apply and fight as hard as I can, and to keep that. And if it's, if somebody else says it's not the right place, then it's a different story. But I'm never going to settle, let's say, for what I want in life.
Yeah, and those are very important points, because I think also when our senior students in grade 11 and 12, when they're thinking of career, they're not asking all those questions. And that's really important. Like, yes, you have to be passionate about something. And okay, not all of us are going to be university driven. Some of us perhaps will pursue a career in the trades. But you have to think, if I pursue this particular career, what am I looking at? Like, what kind of financial future am I looking at? And like, you said you were able to achieve home ownership, which is very important. I'm finding that a lot of youth are pursuing more of their passions, and they're not looking at the possibility of employment opportunities. So then they spend 4 years pursuing something they like, and then they find out, oh, well, you know what, I can't find a job. So maybe I'll go for a master's, maybe I'll go for a PhD. So 9 years later, they've spent all this time in school, and they've got incredible debt, and then they got so behind in the real world because, like you just said, our housing market has absolutely exploded, and it's really hard for home ownership. So putting yourself back in the classroom, and perhaps you're speaking to a young group of high school students, like, what would you say to them today to make sure that before going on for a career selection or higher education, what should they be thinking about so that they don't waste all this time and money pursuing something that's not really financially viable?
No, I think you speak to it well when you talk about, I don't think we were as afraid of debt as we used to be. Maybe it's the accessibility of credit cards or, so I think there's definitely that sense of, and I've heard it called the debt load. And really that makes it feel like it is, it can be a very oppressive thing. So looking for things like, if you're a student, where do you get your experiences? Where do you try out, whether it's a co-op program or an internship, summer jobs, where do you try those things out before you get to that space so that you can explore it? Continuing to explore it in university. I think we typically have a fear of changing. I remember being very much in my first year, not knowing that you can explore. Like, if the first year isn't for you and it's not something you're interested in the end, like, it's okay to take that year and change or migrate and try something else. But I think sometimes we're very focused on getting through to that end mission. And so that doesn't benefit anybody either if they take in a program that maybe they don't know or it's not the right fit for them, to finish it without trying to change it as earlier as they can, to be able to make sure you can maximize it. Co-op programs at university let you explore different types of job opportunities, different types of companies. So that's really powerful. So I always advocate for that, looking for those. And then doing your research, doing it before you even apply, going and doing some days of coaching, going to, shadow somebody that and I bet you most people will be very open to have people have conversations, have coffee chats. And I think the hardest thing is knowing that you don't have to make the right decision, but you have to be brave enough to change if it's the wrong one. And that's a really hard thing to do the younger you are. And there's definitely the sense that, there's still a lot of stigma around skilled trades. And I think it's getting a little bit better, but there's nothing but opportunities in that space. And if you're somebody who likes to problem solve, who likes to work with their hands, who likes a physical job. I mean, I saw a really good talk by, I think her name's Kate Campbell. She was on Homes, and she was speaking about why she ended up as a carpenter, because she was a high educated student, but she loves sports, and so trades can be that intersection between loving of sports and a physicality with the brain work, right? We always think it's one or the other, and it's not. The best tradespersons and the most brilliant people I get to work with on the shop floor, whether it's mechanics or electricians, are the ones that can do both, right? They have the physicality of the job, but they also have the perception and the intelligence and the high end to design and work in systems that are very, very highly technical. And so I don't think students have to compromise on a trades being something that isn't highly specialized and highly technical nowadays. There is more work to be done in the technician's role and servicing in all of industries. There's nothing that isn't being touched by technology. And so keeping that open mind to pursue college is hugely important. Here in Niagara, I know, our Niagara college programs are outstanding and have so much abilities to be hired right before you even finish your schooling. Companies are reaching out to these students and saying, like, come work for us before you even finished, and we'll pay for your terms of school, and right. So those kind of things, taking advantage of where those gaps are, can mean that you can be very, very viable, making money very early in your career without having to pay off somebody else's kind of debt load.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest barriers is the mindset of parents. And there is some sort of social stigma that if your son or daughter doesn't go to university, then you like, what's wrong with you? A, you might be judged as a bad parent, or B, they might think something's wrong with your son or daughter. They're not smart enough, so hence they didn't attend. So, as a message to parents that might have younger children that are listening to the podcast at the moment, what advice would you give to parents to maybe open their minds to perhaps show the viable options there are in skilled trades?
Well, I think there's some really interesting programs that maybe are starting to come up because it doesn't necessarily that you have to pick one particular field. And I'll give an example. Like I know things like Mohawk College, like you can go and start in the college side of things, get the college hands-on practical, and then they align with McMaster to get a degree. So you end up with a dual degree where you've got kind of the college and university setting. So I think programs like that where you've got the interface between the college. We have a really great one here in Niagara for video game development, which is, kind of part college, part university. And so having that versatility of fulfilling both worlds, I think they're complementary. It's not that they're negative. And so, one thing I graduated with very, very little hands-on experience. It was all kind of book studies. And that can be a real detriment too, even in engineering, because you don't have the practical or the hands-on or the ability to kind of design those experiments around you. And so, if I'd taken a shop class in high school, it would have been I would have made me a stronger engineer earlier on. I filled that void by doing volunteering with an organization called First Robotics, and First Robotics introduces high school students to design and build a robot, right? But then you're working in a practical space, you're wiring, you're building, you're working with machining, and when I run those teams, I can bring my tradespeople along with me, and I can bring my mechanics and my tool makers and all of those rests, and I get to work with them. So I see the ability to explore those trades without being it, and helps me build my skills as an engineer, but also giving back to the community and helping those students explore those topics. It has huge value. So I think getting into those very hands-on, very kind of mechanically centered programs, whether it's robotics, whether it's Skills Ontario, whether it's any of those extracurricular types of things, the more experience you have, the better. And I think parents can definitely help their students by understanding what programs are available in their area and making sure they can support the kids in terms of trying to get as many different types of experiences as they can, because life is short. But also recognizing that a career can last 40 years. And so, having a year to change or pivot isn't a detriment in the end. And I think that's what we're all afraid of, is making that first initial mistake. But if you're a good problem solver and engineer, you learn the most by making mistakes. You learn about yourself, you learn about the systems, you learn about the science that you're trying to challenge. And unless we learn how to make mistakes and fail fast and then move to the next problem, we don't grow. And so I think we have to kind of create that culture that isn't afraid of trying new things and isn't afraid of failing. And I can say that, but it is truly very hard to do. It's really hard. It's even more for a parent to want to see your kid fail at something, knowing that that's a lesson in itself. So it's very hard advice, and I'm sure I'm going to have a real hard time, following my own advice when my daughter gets there. But it is the ability to develop brilliant resiliency is the longest term strategy you can give your kids, to be able to fail on their own and get back up again, to recover, because that's what the world needs, right? Is people who are willing to take on those challenges, try different things, and create new solutions. Because there's a quote that says, if we how does it go? Something about if you can't solve the problems with the same way of thinking that you created them, right? So you need those big thinkers. You need to try different types of approaches and people, and if you can't always get it perfect on the right thing. If it was perfect, it's probably too easy a challenge to start with, right? It's only through that iterative approach that you can grow and learn. And so I think parents have to take that approach as well, to taking a little bit of risk, but for the greater good of trying and learning new things.
And it's so true. Like if you just look at the history of science. I had the opportunity to go to the Leonardo da Vinci Museum in Florence, Italy, back in the spring. And it was amazing in the fact that you saw all, like, he was a master scientist. He had his drawings, and this individual, he thought about the helicopter, he thought about a boat, he thought about the catapult, and all his designs were really interesting because they were the beginning of, a creation of something that we're using right now. And like we have helicopters this day and age, but he started that thinking. And through the many years that have gone by with other people studying those drawings, we came to a final product. There were a lot of failures in between. And so, like you said, trial and error. And I think that the greatest lesson about failure is failure only happens when you stop trying. Like you've given up completely. But even though, you've tried something 99 times and you failed, but maybe that 100th attempt, it finally gets you to that end goal that you were achieving. You're so right on that.
Yeah, like I said, and what's the essence of anything in life is just to continue on, right? And persevere and build through those challenges, because you only learn the most amount of information when things are tough and when things haven't gone right. Because if you were already good at it, then it's not a challenge. And it's, you should be working on something that makes you stronger and makes you more thought provoked. And I think that's the essence of it. If you haven't failed at something, then maybe you aren't really in the game, I guess is the essence of that.
Yeah, that's so true. So another mission for O is we like to share the successes and accomplishments that women have. So could you share some of your proudest achievements and contributions within the automotive industry?
Well, sure. So I guess I've got, two spaces that I work in. One is the technical. So, I definitely operate in a space that is, very non-traditional, and again, working with great people, that never has been a challenge. But, as an engineer leading a team of other engineers, I think there's always successes in being kind of the first or the only. I like to say when I go and interview young gentlemen, mostly when I do hirings, I'm not the person that's on the HR team. I'm the engineer boss that they're going to work for. And so if there's, say, 32 engineers that are working for me right now, none of them will be able to say that they've never worked for a woman. And actually, I had a young guy come up to me the other day and was telling me his wife actually asked him, what was it like to work for a woman? And, and I think there's definitely perception that even some of the people in their spaces have never known of an engineering leader that's been female. So you never really know what that ripple effect is going to have, right? You have great people on your team, you treat them well, you treat them professionally, you expect high standards from them, but they're going to go home and maybe talk to their spouses, they're going to talk to their kids. So I like to think that there's a space that says that when you've put women in leadership, there's that trickle effect that can happen, and you're not even sure how it's spaced. So I've led major installation projects, $1 million projects. The first week I got here actually was I had to spend $1 million on some hardware and nothing I had a lot of experience in. So I had to do a lot of research, and I had to get really good fast at being an expert in it, so I could ask all the right questions prior to buying the equipment. But those types of experiences led from $1 million projects to multi-million-dollar projects to major launches, to know that that's really an exciting piece of my career, and all the time kind of knowing there's a bit of a heavy burden as being kind of one of the few women that are doing that space. So I think I'm very proud of that. But also proud of supporting the young women who are coming up behind me, right? There's a significant number of young women who are coming out of that pipeline and making sure that they have a voice, making sure that they get a task with really promotable, technical, challenging jobs that they're not kind of being put upon in group settings. I love it. My husband's always says he's a better feminist than I am, because he's always kind of reminding me of those, there's pitfalls you can get yourself trapped in. And so, knowing that I want to raise this world where my daughter, when she gets to that phase where she has all these wonderful role models, really drives me in everything that I do.
That's fantastic. So, are there any personal or professional goals you've set for yourself in the coming years?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
mean, it's funny, interesting because I think like it's always about looking for that new project or that new opportunity. I really like to work in places where nobody else is working.
Mm,
If something is being successful and driven, I find that's what attracts a large group of people. They always want to chase the thing that's a sure thing or successful. But I think that to me feels like it's a well trod road. So I like to look for those opportunities where nobody else has identified a gap or a solution yet, and continue to delve into that space. So I think I know a lot more now than I did 5 years ago before starting my social enterprise about kind of the interaction of women in non-traditional roles. And so I think continuing to support that space, continuing to drive kind of my technical development as being a
hmm.
critical piece of not just kind of resting on my laurels. It's really easy sometimes to say the right things, but you also have to kind of live it every day, right? You have to make sure you hold yourself accountable to drive and to change, and that
That's right.
you don't just kind of start talking about what you should be doing. And I always like to say that I'm kind of a worker bee more so than just a speaker, because I think it's really important to do things, to be active, because you learn the most by keeping your hands dirty and in the works. And so it's the more promoted you get, sometimes it's a lot harder to do that, and a little
That's
harder to
right.
remember to get back to kind of grassroots. But those make the best leaders, the ones that are in tune with the manufacturing facilities or the shop floor or the people that you're leading. And the farther gap you create, it's just harder to make the best difference you can. And so I strive to be somebody who stays connected to the people that I work with every day.
That's fantastic. I like that. So, thank you so much, Stephanie, for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you.
If well, you're welcome. I just was wondering if you have one final message that you could leave with the O community, what would it be for our young audience?
I think there's a lot of talk about being resilient and being brave, and I think it's a great idea, but it's very hard to know how to do that.
Hmm.
So I'd say seek out examples of people that you see kind of acting like that, behaving like that. If you're old enough to get like a LinkedIn profile, or you see business people or people doing those jobs, seek them out. Seek out the information and
Good.
the experience of those that are there before you, because there's lots of people that'll tell you like how to be, but they're not going to give you the right information of what you need. So you have to look for all these different types of examples. And women in leadership is a great idea. Women in engineering, if you're particularly in that space, women in trades, go
Hmm.
find those people who are doing those jobs and ask them and interview them and find out what made them who they are. And not everybody's going to be the exact same person as you are, but you can take pieces of every one of them and pull them together so that you have something that works for you and what you're trying to achieve. So to do that research and connect to women who are working in those spaces is to me the utmost important.
Yeah, and I think one of the great resources is perhaps reaching out to Stephanie. So, if our listeners, after they heard the podcast, they want to reach out to you personally or find out more about STEM by Steph, where can they go?
Well, easily it's I've got STEM by Steph as my website, so I can go onto there. There's a way to connect to me through there,
Mm,
or just my email is STEM STEMX STEPH at gmail.com. And so, yeah, just reaching out through any of those avenues. I like to hear what people are looking for. I love connecting resources to people. So even if I don't know, I mean, I probably have heard or met somebody that works in that space. And so there's no sense in me having all this information if I can't help others with it. So I do
exactly.
really appreciate somebody reaching out and asking a question and saying, maybe I'm not the right person, but maybe I know somebody who is for you, and we can come up with a plan that gets you there. Because ultimately that's the greater good, is to support those who are at the beginning of their careers and struggling. And I didn't even know how to do those kind of things when I was in high school. Like I said, I jumped into a program without really knowing where it was going, and a job that I
Mm,
didn't know where it was going.
what a
But we
risk.
have so many more researches, and we have so much more resources and internet searches now. I think kids are the opposite. They're overwhelmed with some information. And
It
so
is.
if I can help streamline that or answer some questions about them and help guide them and put them on a path, then I'm very happy to do so.
Well, you heard it, everyone. Stephanie's out there, so send her your questions and your requests. And I'm sure she will be able to help you out. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any lessons and wisdom from successful women making their mark in the world. We have a long journey ahead of us, and changes won't happen working alone. We need your help in circulating the message, and the best way is to do so by sharing this episode. It goes a long way towards supporting and uplifting all women. Weekly episodes drop every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And for those of you that are social, please follow us at Only Women Entrepreneurs to stay up to date on all things about O. We would love to have some feedback, so make sure you leave us a comment so we can provide you with the information and tools needed to help you with your career journey or your entrepreneurship. If you're ready to make that change and you need some assistance, I'm here. Reach out to me at onlywomenentrepreneurs.com for your free one-to-one consultation, where I will help you along with your path to a new career or entrepreneurship. Thank you again, Stephanie, and everyone for your support. And I am excited to connect with you guys again soon on our next episode. Thanks again, Stephanie.
Awesome. Thank you.